Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripasiduryaevacha Patitam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishna Sute Devi Rama Hari Priya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We're continuing our discussion of Rama Lila. This morning we read one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which briefly mentions the encounter with Shurpanaka, she whose nails are like shurpas, winnowing baskets. So I thought we could continue that discussion with the details that are described in the Ramayana. As we saw, Bhagavatam is giving a very brief summary of the pastimes, as Shukadeva Goswami says. He says, you've already heard this so many times. And so he's just giving a summary. But he's giving a summary also for the sake of completeness. You could say that the Bhagavatam is in a way, the whole Bhagavatam is a summary of the pastimes of the Lord, with a special focus on pastimes of Lord Krishna, since it says in the first canto, Ete chamsa kala pumsa Krishnastu bhagavan swayam indrari vyakulam lokam ridayanti yuge yuge. Of all the avatars of the Lord, however, two means however, Krishnastu bhagavan swayam. Krishna is Bhagavan himself. So the main focus of the Bhagavatam is on Krishna. And we generally consider ourselves Krishna devotees. And at the same time, when we chant the name Krishna, we also chant the name Rama. We chant the name Rama as much as we chant the name Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we are naturally inspired also by the Lord's appearance as Rama, inspired by Rama. His pastimes are very wonderful. So we celebrate them as, you can say in a way, as expansion of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. We make this distinction. Maryada Purushottama is Rama, Lila Purushottama is Krishna. But then again, Rama's pastimes are also the emphasis is on this idea of Maryada, of propriety. However, we see in Ramlila also moments, occasions, when we wonder, is this really Dharma? Is it proper? And one of these occasions, this question could arise with respect to how Rama and Lakshmana deal with Shurpanakha. Alright, let's see how this happens. The situation is that Sita, Ram and Lakshman are in Panchavati, and apparently they're coming near the end of their 14-year banishment. But we may get to that discussion. But it says, as Ram was sitting, engrossed in conversation and discussion, a certain Rakshasa woman chanced to come that way. She was the sister of Ravana, the 10-necked Rakshasa, and her name was Shurpanakha. Coming upon Rama, she stared at him as if he were one of the 30 gods. It's explained in the notes. 30 is a kind of common number. It's a short way of saying 33. Okay, is it 33? Is it 330? Is it 3,000? You hear different numbers. How many gods are there? In fact, there's a conversation in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad on this very subject. How many gods are there? And the initial answer is, I think it's 3,006. 3,000. What? Yeah. And then, I forget, it's Yajnavalkya. Someone is saying, asking, yes, but how many gods are there really? And keep reducing down and eventually get to 3, and then, well, actually there's 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rama had long arms, the chest of a lion, eyes like lotus petals. Though delicate, he was very strong and bore all the signs of royalty. He was swarthy as the blue lotus, swarthy, I don't even know this word, dark, I think. Radiant as the love god Kandharva, the very image of Indra. And when the Rakshasa woman saw him, she grew wild with desire. Now, it's good to keep in mind that the situation is in the forest, and it's a kind of convention in Indian Sanskrit literature that the forest is a place it's the opposite of the town or the city. There's the place of civilization, that's Ayodhya, and there's the forest, that's the wild place. It's the place where there's no civilization. And so it's also associated with the passions, with the unbridled passions. And so the forest is the place of Rakshasas, who reign, who go about in the night And what do? They like to eat human beings. They find human beings very tasty. But the forest is also the place of penance, of austerity, and so the sages also go to the forest. It's the place which is free from the confinements, the restrictions of civilized life. So it's a place of shanti. So it's this mixture. The forest is it's a place of contradictions. And now here is Rama. He is the perfect human being. He's not only a human being, which is attractive for Rakshasas for eating, but now he's a beautiful, attractive, handsome human. So she grows wild with desire. And then comes a very interesting passage. Rama was handsome. The Rakshasa woman was ugly. He was well-shaped and slim of waist. She was misshapen and pot-bellied. His eyes were large, hers were beady. His hair was jet black, and hers was the color of copper. He always said just the right thing and in a sweet voice. Her words were sinister, and her voice struck terror. He was young, attractive, and well-mannered, and she ill-mannered, repellent, an old hag. You know what a hag is? Hag is... What is a hag? It's an old, granny, nasty, nasty old lady. That's a hag. Nasty old hag. And yet, the God of love who comes to life in our bodies had taken possession of her, and so she addressed Rama. Now, just before we go on, let me see, there's some notes to this edition, and I wanted to sometimes refer to these. 16, 8, 10. I had mentioned, I think yesterday, that the scholars who have done this translation have paid a lot of attention to the traditional commentaries. Here, the translator Sheldon Pollock says, the rhetorical figure here is known as the Vishama-alankara. Alankaras are literary ornaments. It's a whole science, a whole elaborate tradition of Indian poetics. This is defined in the Sahitya Darpana as, among other things, quote, the juxtaposition of the incongruous. Incongruous, do you know that word? No. Incompatible. Yeah, things don't fit together. And juxtaposition means you put two things next to each other. So two things next to each other which absolutely don't go together. That is called Vishama-alankara. And that's what this is an example of. Because remember, the Ramayana is poetry, kavya. It's considered the original kavya as we discussed also yesterday, how Valmiki became inspired out of his great shoka to pronounce a shloka. So this was the origin of poetry, of kavya, and kavya has these ornaments, such as this ornament of Vishama Alankara. Now, there's a curious point here, though. You may be wondering, how is it? Because these Rakshasas and Rakshasis are shapeshifters. They can change their shape at will. So why is she appearing before Rama in an ugly form? Wouldn't she appear in a very attractive form? And you'll read many versions, usually the various abridged versions of the Ramayana. They will speak of her appearing in a very attractive form. And the reason they do this is because the commentators, this is explained in these notes, the commentators also felt something is wrong here. Why is Shurpanakha appearing in this ugly form? In other words, they're taking the text as it is, the Sanskrit, and they're going, how is this? How come she's appearing ugly? She should be appearing beautiful to attract. But so they tried to make some adjustments, but the translator says they're not very successful. However, we find abridgments, we find other versions of the Ramayana where she appears beautiful. So, for example, in the Ramcharitamanas, she appears very attractive, and maybe we can look at that. Ramcharitamanas was written by Tulsidas in the 16th century, sometime 15, 16, sometime around the time of Lord Chaitanya, in the North Indian language called Awadhi, which is a dialect of Hindi. And this Ramcharitmanas is by far the most popular version of the Ramayana in North India. In fact, many people memorize whole sections of the Ramcharitamanas. Let's see. Yeah, it says, having assumed a charming form, she approached the Lord and with many a smile addressed the following words to him. And I'll continue reading this version and then we'll go back to Valmiki. She says, there is no man like you and no woman like me. It is with great deliberation that God has made this pair. Note the irony. Rama is God. I have ransacked the 3 spheres, but have found no suitable match for me in the whole universe. It is for this reason that I have till now remained a virgin. My mind has been set at rest a bit only after seeing you. So she's giving her pitch to Rama. Let's see what Valmiki says. She says, she says to Rama, "Your hair is matted in the manner of ascetics." You know, it's, what do we call it, dreadlocks. "Yet you have a wife with you, and you bear bows and arrows. How is it you have come into this region, the haunt of Rakshasas, the place where Rakshasas hang out? How is it? You look like an ascetic, but then you look like a Kshatriya, and you have your this lady woman with you. What's doesn't all fit together?" Questioned in this fashion by the Rakshasa woman Shurpanaka, the slayer of demons in his open manner proceeded to tell her everything. And then he goes on to say, there's a king, his name is Dasharath, and I am his son, and I'm here with my brother, and also this is my wife, the Princess of Videha. And then he explains, because I have been sent here at the order of my mother and my father, so here I am. Because I wanted to do what is right. And then it says, "For doing right has always been my chief concern. My main interest is to do the right thing." But he says, "Tell me about yourself." Who are you? To whom do you belong? Why are you here? Tell me truthfully. And the Rakshasa replies, consumed with passion, "Listen then, Rama, I shall tell you, and my words will be truthful. My name is Shurpanaka. I am a Rakshasa woman who can take on any form it will." Why is she not taking on a beautiful form? And I roam this wilderness all alone, striking terror into every living thing. And then she explains, my brother is Ravana, and I have another brother, his name is Kumbhakarna, who sleeps most of the time. And also there's Vibhishana. He's a very righteous guy. He doesn't behave like us, like Rakshasas. And then I have two other brothers, Kara and Dushana, and they're very famous for their power in battle. But she says, I'm ready to defy them all, to go against all of them, for I've never seen anyone like you. I approach you as I would a husband with true love, best of men. Be my husband forevermore. What do you want with Sita? She is ugly and misshapen and unworthy of you. I alone am suited for you. Look upon me as your wife. I will devour this misshapen slut. Slut is a quite heavy word for prostitute. This hideous human female with her pinched waist, along with this brother of yours. And then, my beloved, you shall roam Dandaka with me, viewing all the different mountain peaks and forests. Lord Rama just laughs. And then he begins to reply. And this is what he says. Do you want to hear what he says? Yes. As Shurpanaka stood there, bound tight in the bonds of desire, Rama smiled and, humoring her, replied in jest. Now, before I continue, though, we have an interesting note. To this verse. In jest. Jest means a joke. So, jokingly, he's going to reply. And this is translating the word svechaya. But the translator says the reading should be marked as uncertain insofar as the northern recension has nothing of the sort. It merely expands what I've translated as the causal phrase. Anyway, northern recension, what is this? Okay, the Ramayana there are different versions. In fact, there are so many versions, but they're basically two families of versions. One is called the northern recension and the other is called the southern recension. The one originating in North India and the other in South India. And there are differences, and this is what the scholars struggle with, is okay, so what should we take as the Ramayana, if such a thing exists? So here he's saying that in this northern, in the northern recension, this word does not appear. One of the traditional commentators says, Svechaya means having fun mocking his brother. Others read Svachaya, which means lucid, means clear words. And one commentator believes the correct reading to be Svachandam, quote, the self-willed female. And that would change the translation quite a bit. And then he goes on to say the problem is by no means trivial. It's not unimportant. And perhaps for that very reason has this passage, this verse, been subjected to such considerable revision. For the correct reading would give us some sense of the moral quality of Rama's behavior. He is either intending to teach the immoral, svachanda, creature, a lesson, or he is exhibiting a self-indulgent and to some extent cruel levity. Levity means lightness, humor, svechaya. We should remember, he says, that the events about to take place here provide the impetus, the thrust, the movement to the major event in the epic, namely Ravana's abduction of Sita. This is going to be a turning point in the story because the wounding of Shurpanakha is going to set a chain reaction in motion, which is going to lead to the abduction of Sita. Okay, so here's what Rama says. He says, I'm already married to my lady, and I love my wife. And for women such as you to have a rival wife is a source of bitter sorrow. So he's saying, I'm not going to give up my wife, and if you're thinking you could be a second wife, that's not going to work either. Of course, Rama has vowed to have only one wife. But, he says, my younger brother here is of good character, handsome, powerful, majestic, and still unmarried. His name is Lakshman. Now it says he's still unmarried, but that's not entirely true. Because when Rama marries, his other brothers also marry. I don't remember the names. One of the names of one of the wives of one of the brothers is Urmila. Remember that? Anyway. And Rama goes on to say to Shurpanakha, he has never had a woman before and is in need of a wife. He is young and handsome and will make a good husband, one suited to such beauty as yours. Accept my brother as your husband, large-eyed, shapely lady. With no rival wife, the two of you will be inseparable as sunlight and Mount Meru. When the Rakshasa woman, wild with desire, heard Rama address her in this way, she promptly forsook him. She said, oh, okay. And said to Lakshman, I shall make you a lovely wife, one befitting your beauty. And together we shall roam pleasantly all through Dandaka. Lakshmana smiled at the words of the Rakshasa woman, Shurpanakha, and with customary eloquence made this fitting reply, this appropriate reply. He says, why would you want to be my wife, lotus-like beauty? I am completely subject to the will of my noble brother. I am a slave, and she who is my wife must be a slave as well. Become instead the junior wife of my noble brother, large-eyed lady of unblemished beauty. He is prosperous, and with him your fortunes too will prosper, and you will be happy. Soon enough, he will turn away from this misshapen slut, this hideous old wife with her pinched waist, and give his love to you alone. What man with any sense would reject this singular beauty of yours, my fair and shapely lady, and bestow his affections on a human female? So Lakshman spoke, and the pot-bellied, hideous creature, horrible-looking creature, unused to teasing, thought he was in earnest. She thought he was serious, and he's joking the whole time. He's having a good joke. She thinks he's completely serious. So she started with Rama. As soon as Rama sent her to Lakshman, she forgot about Rama and went to Lakshman and said, I'm yours. Now Lakshman's saying, no, he's for you. And now she's going to, okay, forget you, and she's going to go to Rama. Then, as Rama, the invincible slayer of enemies, sat with Sita before the leaf hut, the Rakshasa woman addressed him once more, wild with desire. She's always wild with desire. Right? She says, it is on account of this misshapen slut, this hideous old wife with her pinched waist, that you care so little for me. I am going to devour this human female at once, before your very eyes. Then, free of any rival, I shall live happily with you. And with this, she flew into a rage, and with eyes flashing like firebrands, she shot toward the fawn-eyed princess like a giant meteor toward the star Rohini. But as she was about to fall upon Sita, she was about to attack Sita, like the very noose of death, mighty Rama angrily restrained her and said to Lakshmana, "Never tease savage, ignoble creatures, Saumitri. Look at Vaidehi, dear brother, she is frightened half to death. Now, tiger among men, mutilate this misshapen slut, this pot-bellied, lustful Rakshasa woman." So Rama spoke, and powerful Lakshmana, in full view of his brother, drew his sword and in a rage cut off the creature's ears and nose. The dreadful Shurpanakha, her ears and nose hacked off, gave out an ear-splitting roar as she fled back into the forest the way she had come, mutilated, spattered with blood, and all the more dreadful now, the Rakshasa woman roared incessantly, like a storm cloud when the rains come, gushing blood all over, a terror to behold. She disappeared into the deep forest, howling, her arms outstretched. She made her way then to her brother, the awesome Katha, who was in Janastan, together with a troop of Rakshasas. Mutilated, she fell before him to the ground like a bolt of lightning from the sky, spattered with blood, wild with fear and confusion. Katha's sister told him the whole story, how Rama had come into the forest with his wife and Lakshman, and how she herself had been mutilated. Yeah, so this is what happens. So again, I mentioned this morning, there's a lot of violence in the Ramayana. There's a lot of this kind of thing. So what do you think? Was this going too far with Shurpanakha to cut off her nose and ears? Maybe she should have. Maybe he should have just
one ear, only. Just
maybe just one ear.
Yeah, I think that would be nicer, more nice.
More nice? Just one ear.
No, with the words.
Huh?
With the words. Or
Maybe just sharp words, get out of here and get lost. But she was attacking Sita. Yes. So Misho thinks it was proper.
She should be beheaded, I think.
Huh?
She should be beheaded on the spot.
Oh, yeah. Should have just been a whack, cut off her head.
And back home.
Back home, back to God. That would have solved the whole problem. If she didn't have a head, she wouldn't have been able to go back to Kara and Dushana, and then, so many other troubles might have been saved.
She would attain liberation.
Huh? Yeah, liberation. Let's see if there's something in the Ramcharitmanas. Well, it just says, with great agility, Lakshmana struck off her nose and ears, thereby inviting Ravana through her to a contest, as it were. Agility with great expertise. Lakshmana did this facial modification.
Surgical procedure.
Surgical, yeah, some
Procedure.
surgical procedure. Some, what's the word I want?
Facial makeover.
Huh? What do they call it when they do surgery to make
Plastic surgery.
Plastic.
Plastic surgery.
plastic surgery? Yeah. I heard plastic surgery has become huge business now. So, as I said, this is what this sets off a kind of chain reaction. What will come next is Kara will become roused to action, that now Rama needs to be taught a lesson, and so he sends 14 Rakshasas with heavy weapons to kill Rama and Lakshman. Of course, it's the other way around. Rama and Lakshman kill the 14 Rakshasas, and then Shurpana comes back to Kara. Now she's really angry. She's really angry. And she's angry at Kara, at her brother. Why you send these wimps, these weaklings? You know, you got to get rid of this. You've got to kill Rama, and he just killed him. So then Kara sends not 14, but 14,000 Rakshasas. And this is where Rama shows his expertise in the use of the bow. It's described that when it comes to the final fight, which is Kara against Rama directly, the sky is so filled with arrows that it becomes dark. Arrows are coming from both sides. So it's just like clouds of arrows going. And you sort of wonder, how does this work, that one person is shooting arrows and killing? It's 1 against 14,000. How is that going to work? Right? And so we're reminded, who is Rama? Rama is the Lord himself. What is 14,000 Rakshasas for him? It's just some fun. Bit of a challenge, but he's alert, and it also says several times how angry Rama is. Rama is in a rage. And so there's also this sense that with the Ramayana, in contrast to the Mahabharata, you could say, in the Ramayana, it's kind of most of the time it's a quite simple, almost black and white, the good guys and the bad guys. There's Rama and his associates, and then there's the Rakshasas. And the Rakshasas, there's nothing good about them. They should just be killed. We saw yesterday, day before, we read how, I read ahead at that time, that Ravana is scheming to get Sita and to abduct her, and so he wants to send Maricha, and Maricha tries to give him good advice, but he's not able to listen. So the qualification, that is to say the disqualification of these demons is they cannot listen to good advice. Vibhishana is an interesting case, because Vibhishana is, in in terms of birth, he's also a Rakshasa. He's the brother of Ravana, of course. But he has a completely different outlook, and he's trying again and again to also to straighten out his brother. He wants the best for him. He actually seems to have some kind of hope for some time that Ravana could be reformed. But his understanding is, although he's a Rakshasa, it seems like he's not. And of course, what is he? He's actually a devotee of Rama, even if he is a Rakshasa. But in general, the Ramayana has this kind of simple black and white approach, whereas the Mahabharata is more complicated. People have mixed behaviors, there are more mixed motivations. The characters are more complicated for the most part. Yeah. Right. Any thoughts, questions, discussion on any of this so far? Shurpanaka or Sita, Lakshman, Rama. Yes, right.
How comes that Shurpanaka speaks such ugly words of Sita in front of Ram, and then she goes to Ravana and she says, "Oh, Sita is so beautiful."
Yeah.
Is it the demoniac mentality to speak one thing and think other?
Yeah, you could say like that. The question is why in front of Rama Shurpanaka speaks so badly about Sita, but then later when she goes to Ravana, she describes Sita as so beautiful. Well, in the presence of Rama, she sees Sita as her rival. And as her rival, she could not possibly have any good qualities, could she? And she's in the very foolish position of thinking she might be able to persuade Rama that indeed she is more qualified than Sita. Which, of course, makes her all the more ridiculous as we read. It's obvious that she is quite clueless. She doesn't understand at all what is going on. And you can say the real problem for her is that she has no understanding of what is bhakti. Because the relationship between Rama and Sita, and also Lakshman, is a relationship of bhakti, of love, of devotion. And she has no idea what is that. All she knows is lust. As it says, she is wild with desire. So when a person is wild with desire, they can say anything to get their way. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to read this note about the time when this takes place. One of the commentators argues that the events which occur at this time of the disfiguring of the meeting with Shurpanaka in the springtime, 3 years after Rama's arrival in Panchavati, that is, at the beginning of the 14th and last year of his exile, the calculation behind this is complex, but is based on the following key points. Rama had spent 10 years visiting the different sages of the forest, that's mentioned earlier. After Ravana's abduction of Sita, he gives her 1 year to submit to him, that's mentioned later. This period is nearly over by the time Rama arrives in Lanka, and that will be mentioned later. The victorious hero returns to Ayodhya directly after slaying Ravana, 14 years to the day since his departure, and that's mentioned in part 6. So this is happening near the end of the 14 years in the forest. So actually a lot of the Ramayana, because this is volume 3, Aranyapanda, the third part. So this is where the beginning of, a lot of action begins here and then extends through to the end. So this is Ramayana Ki Jai. Yes. Yes.
So I didn't get why she had this figure form, but still she claimed that she's more beautiful than Sita. What is behind this?
She seems to be a bit confused about herself. She seems to be in great delusion about herself. This is also, you can say, the effect of lust, that one cannot see things as they are. But again, as the commentary, the traditional commentators had trouble with this. How is it that she is not changing herself to look beautiful? Yeah.
Perhaps she doesn't know what is beautiful to Ram, and she's waiting to tell her how he wants her to look like. Because she promises, she says, I can take any form you want. I want. And so she's waiting to tell her, you should look like this, you should look like that.
Okay, that could be an explanation too. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And Sita did something wrong, that later she had to leave Ram. Everything that happened with problems.
Is there some fault she had, that Sita had, that she becomes separated from Rama? We don't seem to have any account from previous life or whatever. Her fault, you could say, is her innocent attraction to the deer. And I don't know if that's discussed. You might find something in commentary. I'll see if there's something about that later. It is mentioned when the description of the deer comes. We might read that briefly. I think I noted it here. When the deer is, here it is, the deer is described. Okay, this is Sarga 40. we're in Aranyakanda. So this deer, of course, is Maricha, who has transformed himself into a deer. And he enters into Rama's ashram, or near the entrance to Rama's ashram. Here's the description. The deer's horns were tipped with rare gems, his face mottled dark and light, that means different spots. One part like pink lotuses and the other like blue lotuses. His ears were like sapphires or blue lotuses. His neck gently elongated, his belly gleaming sapphire. You know sapphire? Sapphire? His flanks, his sides, were like the pale, velvety maruka flower, the rest golden lotus shoots, and his hooves, his feet, glowed cat's eye beryl. He was slim and slender in the legs and brilliantly crowned with a tail tinged with every color of the rainbow. He was studded with all sorts of precious stones. Studded, that means like stones were fixed to the body. Studded with all sorts of precious stones that gave him a glossy and captivating hue or color. In an instant, the Rakshasa had changed himself into this magnificent deer. So then, it's explained that, this is Sarga 14, rare gems. He is studded with rare gems. It says, this translates, Mani Pravara. He says, the commentators here and elsewhere in the Sarga are oddly reluctant to believe that the deer is literally bejeweled, has jewels stuck all over it. But that is clearly what the poet says. So there's there's 4 different verses that say that this deer had like fixed to its body all these jewels. And the commentators apparently try to adjust that, how, what kind of a deer has jewels all over it. But they have to take the text as it's given to them. They're not going to change the text. So anyway, the point is that Sita was captivated by this form. Let's see. Lots of description of the deer. Yeah, she is out picking flowers. The beautiful lady, not meant for life in the wilderness, caught sight of the jewel-studded deer, his limbs sparkling with gems and pearls. She, with her sparkling teeth and ruby lips, stood there, eyes blossoming with wonder, staring longingly at the deer and his hide, his skin of silvery metal. So she becomes totally absorbed in wonder seeing this form. In delight, she cried out to her husband and to Lakshman, who stood armed and ready. Ram and Lakshman, those tigers among men, glanced up in Vaidehi's direction at her call and saw the deer. Seeing him, Lakshman at once became suspicious and said to Rama, "I'm sure that deer is none other than the Rakshasa Maricha." And he goes on to explain why he thinks that. He knows magic, and this is the magic form of a deer, and so on. So Lakshman is not, he's very suspicious. For nowhere in all the world, Raghava, master of the world, does there exist such a deer sparkling with gems. I'm certain this is magic. But just as he's saying that, bright smiling Sita interrupted. And here it is. The deception had taken her reason away. And she said in great delight, "Dear husband, what an exquisite deer. He has stolen my heart away. Please catch him for me, my great armed husband. He shall be our plaything." Here at our ashram, many beautiful animals come wandering in droves. Yaks and antelope, apes, herds of spotted gazelle, monkeys and kinnaras. Lovely and powerful animals are always grazing here, my great armed husband. But never before have we seen an animal such as this, Your Majesty. None so brilliant, tame, and radiant as this magnificent deer. And she goes on describing the deer and how beautiful it is. And she says, "He has utterly stolen my heart away," this amazing, sparkling deer. "If you can catch him alive, the deer will be a thing to marvel at, a source of wonder. And when our sojourn in the forest has ended and we are back in the kingdom once again, this deer will adorn the women's quarters." She's already thinking, we're going to be back in Ayodhya, I will have this nice pet deer in the women's quarters. And she's imagining more about how it will be back in Ayodhya with this deer. But now she says something that you may find a bit shocking. "But if you cannot catch the splendid deer alive, tiger among men, then his hide, his skin, would be a source of great pleasure for me." So in other words, get that animal alive or dead. "Were the creature to be killed, I should like his golden skin to be stretched over a cushion of straw to make a seat." This, again, is something that's usually taken out of the summary versions of the Ramayana. Okay, so we'll end there. Shri Ram Leela ki, Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Jai Gaur